Hi, and welcome to the Virgin River Cafe Rewatch podcast. Good morning, Gigi.
Good morning, Tracy.
How are you today?
I am very well, thank you.
It's overcast here. I'm a little giddy because it's like 59 degrees. I know it was like 94 3 days ago, but I had
Um,
to I had to put a jacket on today. I'm feeling fall. I
all
felt
righty.
I felt fall this morning, and it's time. It's time to go back to pumpkin. I abandoned the pumpkin because it felt too much like summer. But here we
hmm
are. We're back with fall. So my coffee today is an iced pumpkin latte because
Look at
they're
you.
just so yummy, but it now it feels like I need to be drinking it. Didn't I wasn't
Um,
feeling it before, but I'm feeling it now. So what are you drinking?
Well, I am also having a latte, but I am having a cafe latte.
Mhm. No
So
flavors? No
that's
flavors today?
no. I know this kills you,
It's so
but I don't.
boring. I'm a
I
coffee snob. I'm sorry. I like all the
don't.
frou frou and the foam and the cinnamon
I,
and the
yeah.
all of it.
I don't need all of that.
I
I
need it
just
all.
I'm a simple girl when it comes to my coffee. I don't need it. I you can tell I have a little excitement when I throw in some chocolate.
I know. I mean, it's like, wow, are you doing okay today, Gigi? Because you went with chocolate. Like, are you feeling all right?
So, but otherwise, I'm a simple woman when it comes to this sort of thing.
Yeah, I
I
I'm I'm a snob.
I
I
don't
I want I need the frou frou. I need the
I
extra. I
don't
want
need
all of
every,
it. I love
you
it.
know. Okay.
Cause I always say it's like it's my little like thing for me. It's like that's the one little corner of the world that I have is my coffee. Cause I have a very busy life. I'm always running around. I'm driving people everywhere and doing this and doing that. And I just want to enjoy my coffee. Just a
Well,
little
you
thing
get
for me.
I understand. And you're entitled to it.
Yep.
And more power to your girlfriend. More power to
So
you.
so today we went with pumpkin.
Very nice.
Love and fall. We're back to our second fall. This is the second fall.
We'll see how long it
Oh
lasts.
yeah, no, we're totally gonna have summer in like 3 days, and then it'll be fall again. But that's okay. That's okay. We'll just weave in and out of it until we, get to winter, and then who
Yes.
knows? Who knows what we'll have?
Which will probably be at the beginning of November
Ugh,
for us.
we can hope.
That's true because we've had Halloweens where it's been so hot people couldn't even wear their
I
costumes.
know. You feel bad for the kids because a lot of
And
costumes are like very bulky and big and thick and
well, it's
and
meant for cool. It's meant for cool weather, not for when you walk outside and it's 80 something
yeah.
degrees at 6 or 7 o'clock in the
I
evening.
know. I know.
Just something wrong with that. So
There is. I agree. So let's get started.
okay, we have season 2, episode 8, Blind Spot.
Okay, so the description says Jack helps his friend Mike. Remember Mike from L.A.? He's a detective,
Mhm.
and
He's a
one of
cute
his
one too.
he's adorable. He's half Italian and half Filipino, and he's got dimples, and he's adorable.
And he speaks
Oh,
fluent,
he speaks fluent Italian.
which
Yeah.
is just,
Yep.
girl,
Yep. I know
just
people love Brady, but and there's a reason why there's this thing between Brady and Mike later on next season. Um, that we'll get into because we're gonna get into it. I can tell you. Um, anyway, let's just we're gonna see some more of Mike. Mike starts
let's
to be
not
a
that.
big part of it.
Let's move forward.
Jack helps his friend Mike zero in on Calvin. Mel and Doc investigate an outbreak that could be related to food poisoning, and Hope learns a secret. Now, the last thing Hope needs in her life is a secret.
Is another secret.
Oh, because she's just trying so hard to stay out of everybody's business, and this is not going to bode well for her. I could tell you right now, this is
This
not
is
going to
the
be good.
universe's way of testing hope.
Oh. Well, let's see. Let's get to it. Oh my. Okay, so when we start the episode, instead of a scenery shot, we see Jack tearing up some shelving. Like it's an angry. it's an angry kind
Yeah.
of tearing up.
Oh,
Like
oh,
he's
he is
the look on his
pissed.
face. He is just like giving everything he's got to these portions. Like I feel bad for these shelves. He's trying to break them down, and he's got this. Looks like a, is that a tire iron, or I don't know what that is, but he's
I
using something to
yeah.
like whack the heck out of them.
I know nothing about tools.
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
it's just like this metal rod, and he's using it to like break the shelves down, and then he does something where he pulls it the wrong way or hits it, and it hits him in the leg. So now he's injured. He's limping, and he's like, "Great, great! Like this is exactly what I need." And he's limping his way. Now we have our scenery shot. Scenery shot. Love those. And he
Hmm.
limps his way into the clinic looking for Doc. But Doc's not there. Now, he may not have wanted to see Mel at this point because their last interaction was her sobbing on his shoulder and him holding her, like realizing she's not over her husband. Like, I know we've had a moment, but she's not over her husband.
Yeah.
So she's like, "What happened to you?" And he's like, "Oh, I had a little run-in with a wrecking bar." So that's, I guess, what that's called. It's a wrecking bar. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, come over here. Let's take a look." And she's like, "What were you doing with a wrecking bar?" And he's like, "Well, I'm trying to turn my upstairs storeroom into a nursery." Now, this is a guy who's got twins coming. He lives at the bar or somewhere, and I mean, maybe because he spends so much time at the bar, he figures a nursery upstairs would be the best logical place to have
Hmm.
these kids. I mean, who knows what he's trying to do? And she's like, "So how's that going for you?" And he's like, "Yeah, trying to baby proof the bar." And she's like laughing. She's like, "That sounds
Yeah.
like an oxymoron," because exactly.
Exactly.
So she takes a look at his leg, and it's pretty bad. He's
Oh.
got it bandaged up, and he's got a good sized gash in the front of his calf and on his
God.
shin. And she's like, "Oh, that's pretty nasty. You're gonna need some stitches." And he's like, can't you just like use a butterfly stitch?" And she's like, "Oh, come on, you're tough. You could handle it." And he's not a fan of like stitches and needles and all of that. So she gets the lidocaine out, she gets the needle out, and she's like, "Okay, this is gonna sting." And he's, winces, but you got to numb it before you put the stitches in. And so this is a moment where because she could do that, like, you shouldn't even have to think about it. Like, putting stitches in is a very easy thing for somebody who's done it 1,000 times. So she can, like, they're trying to have this like conversation while she does this. He's like, "So how are you?" She's like, "Fine." And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm glad you're feeling better." And then she kind of feels guilty for like falling apart on him, like falling apart. And he had to
Yeah.
see her like that. And she's like, "I'm really sorry about the other morning. She was tired and she let her emotions, get the better of her." And he's like, "You don't have to apologize." And she's like, "Well, you shouldn't have to take care of me." And he was like, "Well, it's perfectly understandable." And she's like, "It just isn't me." And then, interestingly enough, she says that before the baby, before her dad died, she hadn't cried, which is
Wow.
really interesting because from the second she got to Virgin River, that's all she's been doing is crying.
Done. Right. Exactly.
Like, she, you know, all she does is cry now. And so I guess when her dad died, up till that point, she didn't feel emotions, but then these things happen in her life, and that's all she's done is cry, which just tells you how hard she's had it in the last
Hmm.
couple of years. And he was like, "Well, do you feel like I'm judging you?" And she's like, "Well, I would." And he's like, "No, you wouldn't. I mean, she's way more compassionate than that." And then he hits her with, "You still don't think I understand." And she's like, "Well, what do you mean? Understand what?" And he's like, "Well, that there's no timeline for getting over the loss of someone you love. The staring, the looking at each other. He gets it. She now gets it that he gets it. So now they're on the same wavelength, that
Hmm.
she It's like she feels like she can be herself with him. He can let her just feel her feelings and it's okay. Because remember, they're not together right now. They're still in the friend zone. So in a way, it's actually better because he can sort of be more objective and be more supportive without the romance and all of that getting kind of in the way right now. It's almost like they need to work through all this other stuff first before
Yeah.
they're actually ready for a relationship. So, maybe it worked out the way that it did. I don't know. I guess we'll see. So we have lovely scenery, the river, the Virgin River, and the mountains in the background.
And we're now at Hope's place. It looks like Doc's forgiven her.
Oh, yes. And they're just chilling out, sitting down, having some coffee, and she's doing a crossword puzzle or something. And Doc says, "So, what do you want to do for dinner?" And she's like, "Heaven help me, I just gave you breakfast." And he goes, "That you picked up from the bakery truck," which is very nice of you, by the way. She was like, "You're welcome." Like, they get a little sassy. And he's like, "You know what I miss?" And now remember, they were together for a really long time. They were together. Then they were very separate for like 20 years. So we don't know how long they were married, living as a married couple together in the same. We have no idea.
That's true.
They never explain that, but it's clearly long enough to establish, some routines and some things that they miss. He misses, she misses. And he says, "I miss all those dinners that we used to have." And she is so funny. She's like, "You mean the ones where I slave over the stove all day, spend hours cleaning up while you relax after a hard day's work?" I mean, she like does it like so funny. And he laughs and he's like, "I've evolved. I mean, I'll even clean up and bring dessert." And she's like, what do you even want?" And he's like, "Well, your lasagna, ugh, chef's kiss, the best." She goes, "God, do you know how long it takes to make lasagna from scratch?" And he's like, "No, I have no idea. Like, I don't know, a couple hours?" And she's like, "Yeah, more like 6. He goes, "Well, it's not like you don't have the time." And she's like, "Really? Did you really just say that?" He goes, "Hey, calm down, relax. I'm just saying. You make the best lasagna in town, in the county, like in the whole world. But if it's too much, we can just eat at the bar." She's like, "Fine. After I get my hair trimmed, I'll make you lasagna. But you're pushing your luck." And he's so cute. He comes over, he gives her a kiss, and he's like, "You won't have to clean one dish. I'll take care of it. Scout's honor." So now they're kind of getting back into their groove again and their fun little banter and being silly with each other, which is cute. So we're back at the clinic, and Mel's finishing up with Jack, and she was like, "Keep it clean, keep it dry, for the next few days, and if there's any problem with it, let me know. In a couple weeks, come back, and I'll take out your stitches." And he's like, "Okay, you're all set to go." And he's like, "Well, what do I owe you?" So she's like, "Yeah, just take it off my bar tab. Like, you feed me, you give me drinks all the time. I think we're good." Now, they've been in there for a minute, having their conversation, whatever, fixing his leg up, and she opens the door to a full room of sick people. Like, oh, where'd they all come from? And as she's opening the door, Doc walks in. He's like, "Oh, good morning. We'll get to all of you in just a few minutes." And then Mel starts calling people in. Now, you would think, silly me for thinking this, there's a full room, and you would think that Doc would jump to work. No. He goes to the kitchen. Now, didn't he just have coffee with Hope?
Well, sometimes you need more than one cup.
Oh, I know. I understand that. But there's a room full of patients, and Mel is taking them one at a time, and he goes into the kitchen. Jack follows him, and he starts pouring himself a cup of coffee, and he goes, "What happened to you?" He goes, "Oh, a wrecking bar, whatever." And he's like, gives Jack a cup of coffee. He pours himself a cup of coffee, and he's like, "It sounds like a metaphor for you and Mel." And Jack starts laughing. He's like, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "I swing, she deflects, I get clobbered." He's like, "Yep, sounds about right." And Jack's like, "Maybe it's time to put that wrecking bar down." And Doc is like, "What?" He goes, yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, so they had plans for Doc to go with Jack somewhere. And he was like, are we still on for later? And he goes, I don't, it's not even 9 o'clock. I got all these walk-in patients and I don't think I can. And he's like, yeah, no worries. Don't worry about it. And then he's like, but you should take Hope. She knows the most about these things. And he goes, look, I'm with everything going on with Hope. I don't know that I'm ready for her help right now. Because Hope, there's a really good chance that she will overstep and put her foot in her mouth and piss everybody off, especially Jack at this point. And he's like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. And Doc's like, well, she is the best negotiator in town, so you might want to take her with you.
Yeah, that woman can talk her way out of a paper bag.
Right? And I know, Jack knows that. So he's like thinking, maybe. So now we're at Jack's bar, and Preacher's behind the bar, and Connie walks in, and he doesn't even let her speak. He's like, the answer's no. Okay? No. And she does this, the sly, like, cocks her head, like, come over here. We're going to talk in private. That move. She gives him a look. And she's like, you don't even know what I'm going to say. He's like, look.
It's the look your mother gives you or your father gives
like,
you.
Like, get your ass over here right now. Right? And Preacher's like, I'm not going to let you implicate yourself by involving you in some fake alibi. He's like, no, I can't do this. She goes, too late. It's already been done. He's like, oh my. He's like practically throwing his hands up. She goes, I'm just here to tell you. Come by my house tomorrow. Wear something that can get dirty. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, look.
It's like she's about to bury another body.
She's like, look, I'm what they call a credible alibi. Like, she has clearly thought this through. He's like, we're not related, we're not friends, and you don't work for me.
It's an Angela Lansbury moment.
And he's like, wait, I consider us friends. She goes, yeah, we're friendly, but there's a difference. He goes, look, the police will never suspect that I'm covering for you. And he's looking at her like, and she's giddy. Like, she is like, oh, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to say. This is the best line of defense for you and Paige.
And he's still trying to figure out, who is this woman?
Like, where did she come from? Into the invasion of the... And he's looking at her like, what the hell is this? What is going on? And she's like, you don't fight it. Like, at this point, don't fight, Connie, because you're not going to win. She's just go along with her. So Doc's talking to, because Nick came in. He was one of the patients. And he was like, it could be food poisoning. It could be the flu. We took some tests, and we're going to wait till we get the results back. And, Nick is like, okay, well, it actually could have been Joellen's oyster stew. He goes, it was so bad. He goes, I had to sneak out and get a real meal at Jack's bar, And he goes, so how's Joellen feeling? Oh, no, she's fine. She's fine. That woman has a cast iron stomach.
I used to have one of those.
Yeah, me too. in the younger days. So Doc's saying goodbye to Nick, and then Charlie walks up and he goes, "Oh, Doc, I got a terrible case of indigestion." And he's kind of not feeling so good. And he's, come on, sit down, take care of yourself, whatever. Now Mel is seeing Jeb. Brady knows him, and he was the one. Remember the family that came in with the little girl.
Yeah, he's the father.
Jeb is the father. And she's telling him kind of the same thing. Like, if your symptoms persist, come back and see us. Not really sure. And he's like, oh, I should have gotten that flu shot. And she goes, oh, that's fine. You can come back. We'll take care of that too. Don't even worry about it. So then Doc and Mel got to kind of get together, and they've both seen a few patients, and now they're trying to figure out what's going on. And Doc is like, okay, I think it's food poisoning. And they agree. So now they've got to figure out, okay, if it is food poisoning, we got to figure out the source. So Doc is like, all right, let's get everyone to list the things that they ate within the last 24 hours. And he goes, no. You do the intake, and I'll take Betty. And she's like, but if you do the intake, shouldn't I do the exam? And he's like, no. What? No. And so they're basically arguing about the process of how this is going to get done because she has her idea of what they should do and how they should handle this, and he has his idea.
And the two shall never meet.
Yes, and this is where they are going to butt heads. And he's like, look, in an outbreak like this, it's more efficient for one person to ask all the questions, you, and the other person to treat the patients, me. And she's like, what? So that's not going to go over so well, but
at this point, she's got no choice.
Right, exactly. He's the boss.
So we have
that's
our
Ricky. Yes, Ricky and Lizzie.
Yeah, youngest couple.
And they're at the bakery truck, and Ricky walks up, and she's like, "You look annoyed." Or he walks up to Lizzie, and he's like, "You look annoyed." And she goes, "Ugh, everybody keeps asking for refills." It's like, you work on a coffee truck. Like, what do you expect? And she's like, "Yeah, I need a break."
She has a bit of what Brady has, which is less work and more pay.
Allergic to work, I think. Yeah. So she puts a "we'll be back later" sign, like just leaves and grabs Ricky's hand, and they're running like away. Like, I don't know that you can actually do that because clearly Connie is not there. Connie was talking to Preacher. Maybe she's on her way, but
yeah, well, you know how that goes.
Mm-hmm. So they go out to this like little dock area, and Ricky's like looking back at the truck, like, okay, there's like, you know him, he's worried, he's concerned, like his heart's beating a little fast. There's nobody watching the truck. What if there's customers? Like what? Like he's worried about it.
Kid's been bitten by the worry bug.
Well, that's his nature because he's responsible. Mm-hmm. Like he wouldn't leave in the middle of his shift to go take a walk. Like he would ask for a break and then go take one if given permission. But she just was like, "I'm out of here." And he's like, "God, I wish I could do that." And she's like, "Well, you can always hide out in the bathroom." And she's like, "Oh, no, that's gross. There's so germs in there and I don't want to know." And she's like, "Oh, please don't tell me about the 34,000 kinds of bacteria in the bathroom. Like, please." And she's like, "Look, if you ever want me to kiss you again, stop talking about toilets." And he's like, "Yep, got it. Check. No problem." Besides, you know way too much about bacteria. And he's like, "Well, I do want to be a medic." And she's like, "You mean a doctor?" And he's like, "No, like a medic in the Marines." And she's like, "Oh, that's cool." So this is where you find out that his ambition is to go into the Marines. Now, I don't know if he's said that to anyone before. And
besides
I don't even know that he's told Jack.
Well, they know he wants to go into the Marines. They just don't, you know.
I mean, has he really like talked about it though?
Well, other than when Jack said he would help him tell his grandmother.
Yeah, that's true.
Preacher knows that he wants to do that because even Preacher teased him. Remember when the women at the table were giving him a hard time and he said that's great for boot camp?
Right.
So he's talked to two people about it.
And I think maybe he hasn't specified that he wants to be a medic. Maybe that's the
I don't think that hasn't come up.
Like the direction of what he wants to do hasn't been shared, but the definitely and that's a big influence of Jack and Preacher. That's the direction that he wants to sort of follow in their footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that Ricky is there is he brought a check for the bakery truck.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's kind of like, "Thanks. So is that the only reason that you're here?" And he was like, "Well," she's like, "Oh, I'm just messing with you." I mean, she's so coy. Like he's such a young, like his emotions and his experience with women is so immature and young that and granted, she's from LA. I'm sure she's had many boyfriends and she just seems like there's not a lot of supervision, so she's kind of out painting the town red, white, and blue every day. So I feel like he's such a novice when it comes to this, and she's playing all her coy little games, and he just sometimes it goes right over his head. He doesn't even know what she's talking about sometimes. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, he's literally virgin territory.
Oh
Let's
yeah,
just
100%. Yeah. And so
so
she kind of laughs at him because he's so serious all the time, which is kind of cute. And he's like, I'm not. And she's like, oh, come on. You know you are. So she's like, you want to come over later? He's like, to the truck? She goes, no, to my house. You mean Connie? She goes, well, that's where I live. And she's like, she's going to be gone. She's not going to be back. And, and he's like, well, we could go to my house. My grandmother will be there. He goes, okay, weirdo. Like, he goes, well, won't Connie be upset if I come over? And he goes, well, that's half the fun. And what's the other half? She's like, and then she kisses him, like really kisses him. And she's like, guess you'll have to find out. So we're back at the bar. And that's why Connie's not at the truck, because her and Lily and Muriel and Joellen are all sitting at Jack's in the sewing circle. Okay, so Preacher is serving them some lemonade, and they're kind of joking that Doc and Hope are acting like newlyweds. That they're just being silly. And Muriel's a little perturbed. She's like, yeah, the very minute I show interest in Doc, she wanted him back. It's like, really? Ugh. And, I mean, everybody's happy for them because, I mean, they clearly wanted to be together. They just needed to get out of their own way, figure out their business, and,
Yep.
So now that they're going to get married again, now we got to figure out where and how. And people are like, what are you talking about?
And so now this reminds me of my goddaughters and her girlfriends.
Yeah.
When one of them is getting married, it turns into a chicken cackling, because everybody has an opinion of where this wedding needs to be, who needs to do it, what the dress needs to be. And this conversation with these women, even though they are 30 to 40 years older than my goddaughters and her girlfriends, it's just hysterical.
This conversation's the same. Doesn't matter how old you are, the conversation's the same. So the ladies are like, what are you talking about? Hope's not going to get married again. I mean, Connie's like, there's no way. He's like, well, how do you know? And then Lily's like, well, remember, they technically still are married. She goes, well, maybe it's like a vow renewal. And she's like, well, why would they do that? And then Hope walks in. And she goes, what's so funny? And they all kind of like stop talking. She goes, chickens. So she goes, well, we're just discussing the fact that you and Doc are going to get married again. And Hope looks right at Muriel and she's like, gee, I wonder how that came up. She goes, well, you're obviously not trying to keep your relationship secret. She goes, I never thought I'd say this, but Muriel's correct. And they're like, yes, we knew it. She goes, yes, Verdon and I were together again, and no one's talking about resuming anything. And Connie's like, see, I told you. Otherwise, you can kiss your freedom goodbye. She goes, well, says the woman who's never been married, it's going to go back to the same old stuff, pressing his shirts, and packing his lunch, and making his appointments, and all of that. She goes, oh, Vernon and I are not in a rush. Because, of course, Muriel's like, well, you don't even know it's going to work out. And Lily's like, trying to change the subject. Well, what does Doc want? Somebody says,
Doc has a say in this.
Well, they're like, yeah, all men Doc's age, all they want is a wife. Right? Married men, they outlive their peers. Married women. I mean, it's a direct quote. What does Connie say? The Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health. She's like, that sounds made up. So Jack walks up to the ladies. And he's like, everybody's like, hi, Jack. Hello. Like, everyone just oogles over him. And he goes, Hope, I was wondering if you could help me out with something. Drive over to Stanton with me. And she's like perked up. Like, she has been waiting for an opportunity that he wants to say more than hello to her.
That's right.
And Connie pipes in, like, I'm heading over to Shelter Cove if you need a ride. It's on my way. And Hope is looking at Connie like, shut up. Like, she's giving her the look like, you need to shut your trap. And Hope is like, well, I was looking for Hope's opinion on something, you know, unless you're busy. She goes, no, I'm totally available. Let's go. See you gals later. Like, she's like out the door, like faster than anything. She goes, oh, I have to say, what do men see in her? Like, Muriel just can't understand it.
And Connie says, her natural beauty.
She goes, my goodness. The only thing natural about Muriel is her big head. That's what Connie says. They all start laughing. Oh, my goodness. So Doc is back at the clinic, and he's, you know, trying to figure things out. And Mel walks in because now she has interviewed everyone. She's the one in charge of finding out what they've eaten in the last 24 hours, trying to figure out what this food poisoning possibly could be from. And she's like, I found a common denominator. She said it's Jack's, which honestly, if it's a food poisoning and it's multiple people, that's like the only place to eat. I mean,
yeah.
Of course it's Jack's. Like, duh, you know?
Yeah, unless they had like one of those fairs or something where, you know, everybody's
And they didn't, so that's...
Yeah.
It was kind of obvious, but it's not just Jack's, but it's what at Jack's. So she's like, okay, the common denominator is Jack's. Every single patient reports eating there 24 hours. There's no other commonalities. Like, there's no other place that anyone else has been. And he's like, okay, well, do we know exactly what it was? And she goes, it could be the beet salad. There's a lot of ingredients, and they haven't figured out specifically. And Doc's like, okay, we need to call Preacher and Jack. They need to close. They need to, you know, figure it out. We got to go over there and talk to him, figure out what's going on. He's like, okay, you stay here and do more intakes, and you know, I'll call them and tell them to stop service. And she gets kind of a little pissed, and he goes, and then you'll come over and we'll explain everything. And she goes, well, why can't you just do the intakes? And he's like, because we have a system and I don't want it to be interrupted. And she gets really pissed, and she goes, no, this is you treating me like your assistant again. And he was like, He goes, if you were my assistant and you spoke to me like that, you'd be gone. She's like, okay, like something's up with Doc. Like, what's going on? So we're back at Jack's bar. There's a note on the door, and it says closed until further notice. Now they're doing a deep clean.
The only fun place in town, and it's closed.
I know, right? It's like the only place to eat. So now they're doing a deep clean. They're mopping, they're wiping things down. You know, Mel walks in, and she heads to the kitchen because she doesn't see anybody except the two ladies in the front that are like mopping the floor and cleaning everything. And she's like, hey, and Preacher's not happy. And he's like, how many?
Oh, no.
How many? She's like, 12. So it means 12 people have this mysterious food poisoning thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And Preacher is in the process of emptying everything from the refrigerator.
And that kills me.
Yeah, I know, because they really don't know what it is. If they knew exactly what it was, they could get rid of that thing or anything around that thing, but they don't know. And so she's like, is Jack around? He's like, no. And, you know, he's not picking up his cell. I don't know where he is. You know, and Preacher's like, are you sure we're the source? And she's like, it's the berry beet salad. It appears to be responsible. He's like, this is unbelievable. And she's like, look, it should be a day or so. And he's, I don't know how this happened, because Preacher is like meticulous with his kitchen. He is very, very dedicated. He's very, I mean, he got pissed at Brady for trying to touch the lemons that were on the bar.
Exactly.
Like,
tell me about it.
Right? So he's like, I don't know how this happened. So Mel sort of reassures him in a way. She's like, look, however this happened, guaranteed it was out of your control. It was something that you could not have prevented. It seems like it's just one of those things that happened. So she offers to like try and get a hold of Jack, and he's like, no, it's fine. Thanks. I'll figure it out. I'll try and talk to him. So she apologized. She's like, I'm really sorry that this happened. You have to deal with this and all of that. So she's leaving, and in walks Lizzie. And she's like, Doc said you were going to be here. And he's like, are you sick? And she's like, no. I decided to take you up on those birth control samples. She's like, okay. Well, did Connie suddenly have a change of heart? She goes, oh, no, she never will. She goes, well, I'm happy to give you some samples, but you really should have a pelvic exam. And she goes, but you said it wasn't necessary. Well, it's not required, but she's like, well, then I just need the pill. She goes, all right, fine. Just come with me to the clinic. She goes, I'll go over the proper usage and the paperwork. She goes, it's not brain surgery. Can you just put him in the bag? Fix my thoughts for a later date. And we'll be like, remember that? Okay. So here we are. Jack and Hope pull up to this house that has a for sale sign out front. And there's a real estate agent, and Hope is meticulously looking through this house. And she's making comments left and right. I mean, I think she's making this poor guy nervous. This poor real estate agent does not even know what hit him.
And that's pretty much why she's doing it.
Yep. She's like, there's water damage under the sink, and God only knows what calamity awaits in the crawl space. And he's like, look, the inspector didn't find anything. He's like, well, the bedrooms are kind of small, and the HVAC system, it's on its last leg. And what is this, a wood-burning stove? Like, what are you supposed to do for dinner? Make s'mores? And he goes, well, I thought it was charming. And then Jack's phone rings, and he doesn't pick it up. And they're looking around some more, and he's like, look, I'm authorized to take an additional 10% off the asking price, but that's the best I can do. And his phone rings, and he's like, oh, excuse me for a minute. And he goes outside. And then Hope kind of gives Jack a look.
Look, yeah.
Like a look with a wink.
Yeah.
And he's like, so you like the place? And she's like, it's a gem. And he's like, Doc was right. You're good. He's like, thanks for driving the price down. And she's like, very smitten with herself. She's like, you're welcome. Yeah. So are you going to buy it? And he's like, well, the room above the bar isn't exactly kid-friendly. And she's like, never mind. And he's like, what? Nothing. I promised myself that I would not ask any personal questions. And he's like, okay, look, you just saved me 10%. What are you going to say? Because he really does value her opinion. He just doesn't want her to, mess things up for him. It's one thing to have an opinion about something. It's another thing to step your foot in it and, screw things up.
Yep.
And so she's like, so are you buying the house for you or for someone else? He goes, well, right now I'm just focused on the twins. He goes, I want them to have somewhere comfortable and safe. And if that means they go back and forth between me and Charmaine, or we all live here, who even knows? He goes, are you really open to that, living with Charmaine? And he goes, well, I mean, and then the reality of being a father really hits him. He's like, the best way to spend time with my kids, is to live with them. So, he goes, she's like, I thought you didn't feel that way about her. And he's like, I don't, but, dads always don't get, a fair deal, and if he wants to spend as much time as possible. And she's like, okay, can I say one more thing? And he's like, oh, fine, go ahead. He goes, look, I'm not the one to talk, but you gotta go after what you want, even if it's a rougher road. And he's like, yeah, but it's not about doing what's easy. And then he tells her, I was with Mel the morning after the anniversary. And the reality is, she was destroyed. I mean, Hope doesn't know that happened. Nobody knows that she got that life insurance and literally broke down. Yeah. Only he knows that. And the reality of, is she really ready for a relationship, kind of hit him hard. And he was like, look, I mean, he might have to accept the fact that she's not ready.
She may never be ready.
And she, exactly, may never, and she may only want friendship. And, she's like, yeah, but eventually, he goes, look, I can't keep hitting my head against a wall. I just, I have twins coming. Regardless if Charmaine is in my life or not, he has these babies coming, and he has to get ready. He's probably got 6 months, 5 months before they're going to be here. And he needs, if he buys this house and has to renovate it or what, he's got to take that time. He's got to do that now. So his phone rings again and he's like, oh, I got to take this. And she's like, okay, no problem. And, and he really does appreciate her input. Because, I mean, at least she's being honest with him. She's not telling him what to do, and she's not getting anyone else involved. So I think it was sort of like a small step toward them finding their better footing again, which is really good. So we're back at Doc's clinic.
And the place is...
And guess who Mel's talking to?
Our favorite person.
Bert. We love Bert.
We love Bert.
And Bert's sick. Bert has a temperature of 103. And he's like, oh, it was that salad that got me sick. And she's like, well, we're not sure. And he's like, how come? And she's like, well, there's 250 bacteria, parasites, and viruses. And, it could be, a lot of them can cause a foodborne illness. And he goes, oh, I know I should have ordered mashed potatoes. Like he's trying to watch his cholesterol. He's trying to watch his sugars. And God, if I just would have had the mashed potatoes, I wouldn't feel like crap right now. Poor Bert.
This is what good comes from good eating.
I know. Terrible. And she's like, look, just drink lots of fluids and rest. And Doc's like, I need you over here. And she's like, okay. And she goes, okay, Bert, go ahead in, and Doc will see you in a minute. So she's doing all the intakes, and then Doc's gonna see the patients. So he's gonna have a little chat with Mel, and he's like, okay, how's it going? And she's like, well, Bert and a few other patients are reporting shortness of breath. Now that's not a symptom of food poisoning. So now they're like, oh, okay, and they're like, that's not typical. So And she's like, well, it could be a delayed response, but... So now he's like, okay, I need you to do some research on other things that it could be, other illnesses that include the shortness of breath and that affect, like, your respiratory system. And she's like, well, I need to finish these intake forms and the food logs and all of that. And he goes, well, you haven't finished yet? And she's like, Doc, come on now. It's a lot of paperwork. He's like, well, what are you doing out there? And she's like, I'm taking notes, logging each person's activities and everything over the last 24 hours. He's like, well, do it faster. And then this is when she's had enough. And Mel is not one to back down. And she will speak her mind. Love that about her. She's like, what the hell is the matter with you? She goes, I'm working as fast as I can, and you're here barking orders at me like I'm a short order cook. And she's like, this is why. He's like, this is why I didn't want you working for me. Like, whoa, where did that come from? She's like, excuse me? She goes, we're in the middle of an outbreak. And all you care about is how nice I am to you? And she's like, oh, no, you're being unprofessional. And he's like, well, you're being overly sensitive. And she's like, actually, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase my last statement. You're being an ass.
Yeah, ass.
And now everybody could hear that. Bert peeks his head in, and everybody in the waiting room is like, I mean, even people have their mouth open like, oh my God. He's like, and if we didn't have a room full of patients, I'd walk out of here right now. And she storms out. And everybody's looking at her like, oh, she puts a fake smile. Who's next? And Bert just backs up like, I'm not. Don't make eye contact. Don't make eye contact.
I love Bert's reaction. He's standing by the door. She comes out and he like backs himself.
He's like backs out like, I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. I don't know what you're talking about. Everybody play it cool. Play it cool. Mom and Dad are angry. Mom and Dad are fighting. Oh my gosh. Okay, so now we are with Jack. I gotta cut that out. I swallowed wrong. So Jack shows up at this very beaten down old camper.
Trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Camper.
And he knocks on the door. and it's Spencer. And he kind of looks around and he's like, "Did you pass anybody on the way up?" He's like, "No." He goes, "I can't take any chances that someone might, see me." And he's like, "Yeah, I got it. I got it." And he goes, "This is a bad idea." And he goes, "Look, nobody knows I'm here." He's like, "Look, Calvin has people everywhere." And he goes, "Spencer, I think I can help you." And he goes, "Look, if Calvin finds out that I ratted him out, he's going to kill me. Like, I'm dead for sure. Because that's the kind of guy Calvin is." He goes, "Not only me, but my family. I could put my family in danger." And Jack, kind of a little bit of reality is like, "Yeah, but if you do nothing, I mean, look at these guys that work for Calvin. They don't seem to live very long." So Calvin's like thinking about it, like, what should I do? And he's like, "Look, this isn't just about you. I mean, you got to think about Maxine and your son. Like, is this the kind of life you want for them?" And he's like, "God, I don't know." He goes, "If Calvin even thinks I'm talking to you," he goes, "trust me, I'll make sure you're covered. Nobody'll know that I'm talking to you." And he's like, "All right, what do you want to know?" And he goes, "Did Leo work for Calvin?" Now, Leo, that's the
It's
guy,
dead guy. Mm-hmm.
the dead guy in the picture, who came and put the knife to Mel at the clinic. Remember, he was looking for drugs. His name was Leo. And he goes, "Yeah, but he was only on the job for like a couple weeks. And, Calvin put him on security detail." And he goes, "Yeah, okay, so what happened?" And he goes, "Of course, he got strung out on the product." And he goes, "Okay, so Calvin's moving hard drugs." And Spencer gets real nervous and he's looking around and he's looking around. He was like, "Is there a connection between drugs and Emerald Lumber?" And Spencer's like, "Look, I'm not saying another word. You know, I need to make sure that Maxine and my baby are safe before any of this goes any further." "Well, unfortunately, Spencer, until Calvin's behind bars, you're never going to be safe. I mean, that's reality." And he's like, "Look, if you help me, I will make sure that your family is safe and get you guys out of Virgin River." And Spencer's like, because really, the goal is to keep his family safe. Like, he really doesn't care about himself, but he wants obviously to get out of it, but he's got to make sure that Maxine, because you don't know what Calvin's capable of. I mean, is he really, like, would you put it past him to do
Nope.
something to Maxine or the baby? Like,
Oh, hell no.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't know.
For him, it's
Definitely.
all about money, so he doesn't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah. And if Maxine is gonna blab, he's gonna end her life.
Oh, for sure. 100%. So now we're in Clear River and we're at a hair salon. Hope walks in and she's like, "Any stylist will do. I just need a trim. Just something. I don't have a lot of time. We need to make this fast." And she walks up to the counter and in walks Charmaine. And she's like, "Oh, I thought you were still off work. Like, I didn't know you were back." And she goes, "Oh, I just do a couple of hours a day." She goes, "Oh, it's nice to see you." She's like, "Oh, no. You come with me. Cut and color on the house." She goes, "Oh, no. That's not necessary. It's fine." She goes, "Oh, a chestnut base. Really update your entire look." And she goes, "I don't need an update. I just need a trim. Emphasis on quick." And she's like, "So, how are you and Doc?" Because she goes right into asking a million questions. Remember the dinner? She just couldn't help herself. And she goes, "Oh, news certainly travels fast around here." And she goes, "Well, I did live with you." And she goes, "Well, I thought we were being discreet." She goes, "Yeah, I got a sixth sense about relationships." So she goes, it's not easy finding love. You two are very lucky, especially with a man such as dependable as Doc, which is interesting because he's the one that had an affair with her mother. So kind of interesting that she says that. But whatever.
But there's a point she's getting to.
Oh, yeah. And so she explains to Hope that the day before, her and Jack sat down to go over their birth plan. And then she found out that Jack lied to her and said he was at work and he was really with Mel. And she's like, "Oh, really? Well, I don't know anything about that." She goes, "So I ended up calling my aunt." Now this is usually people talk to their stylist. Their stylist isn't usually the one that does all the talking. They ask a lot of questions, but usually they're not the one doing all the talking. But apparently Charmaine...
My own does a lot of talking.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. So Charmaine is like, "So I ended up calling my aunt because I just needed to vent." And this is the aunt that lives in Oregon that bought all the presents for the
Mm-hmm.
babies. And she's like, and now I have this really big decision to make. And Hope is like, and then she says, and I can't tell anyone, and it's killing me. And the look on
Oh.
Hope's face is like, stop talking, stop talking, stop talking right now. Don't say another
I
word.
jumped. I had to jump out of that seat so fast and just the thing over at her and kept walking out the door.
Right? Right. But no. She was like, well, I'm sure you'll live through it. You know, she goes, I really want to tell you, but you know, you have to swear not to tell anyone, especially Jack. And she goes, you know, I can't be involved with anything related to Jack and his personal life, and so just, you know, just please don't say anything. She goes, oh, it's fine. It'll be our little secret. And Hope freaks out at her. She's like, no, really, like things between me and Jack are finally starting to get back to normal, and I can't be a part of any gossip. And she blurts it out anyway. My aunt invited me and the twins to come move to Portland and live with her and my uncle. She's like, oh, good God. She goes, you know what? I'm seriously considering it. She goes, no, 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 no. Stop talking. Please stop talking. It's like it almost is like she wants to put her fingers in her ears and go, la, 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 la. You know, like kids do. And Charmaine just keeps talking, and Hope is like, Charmaine, I can't know this. Oh no, now I know this, and I can't unknow this. And it's like, ugh, now that I already know. She goes, oh my God, I need to go. I need to leave. I've got to get out of here. And she's, but wait, I haven't even cut your hair yet. She goes, you know, it looks great. If anyone asked, I wasn't here. And Charmaine's like, but wait, come back. Oh, that's funny. So now we know what the secret that Hope has.
The one that she did not invite
She
and
didn't
did not
want,
want.
doesn't want, and can't have, and she's got it anyway. Goodness.
Poor Hope.
So now we are at the police station, and Mike is getting a call from Jack. And he's like, hey, I think I made some headway with Calvin. Because remember, Mike's like, there's nothing we can do, there's no evidence. It's all hearsay until he actually does something or we catch him doing something. There's really nothing we can do. So we're kind of at a standstill waiting for something to happen or more evidence to come through. And Jack is, of course, trying to find some evidence or find something, you know, that he can give to Mike to move this case along. Because the faster he gets this figured out, the faster the drugs that are in Virgin River can get out. Because that's all he's worried about. It's like, what is this going to do to the town and the people? So he's like, I think I made some headway, you know, and Mike is like, okay, well, tell me the story. And he goes, okay, I got a guy who's going to testify that Calvin had Leo killed. And Mike is like, okay, but Calvin didn't pull the trigger. He goes, no, but because he gets other people to do his dirty work, obviously. And he goes, yeah, but in that kind of case, they might have to like do it in a different way. And, you know, and he's like, have you ever heard of RICO? Now, RICO is a very kind of specific kind of a charge. It stands for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act. It's basically for like criminal organizations. It's the kind of charge that they put on gangs and that kind of a thing. Like organized crime tends to, because it encompasses a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike is like, okay. And he goes, and so Jack's like, isn't that like a mob thing? And he goes, yeah. It's used to prosecute illegal backdoor activity. So it's not just the actual crime, it's all the stuff that goes along with it. So it's sort of like an all-encompassing kind of thing. And he goes, but what they need to do is prove that Calvin is running like a criminal enterprise. And then they can target his assets, and then they can basically shut him down. And they said, okay, so your guy, like how sure is he when he wants to do this? And he's like, oh, he's all the way in. He goes, okay, then he's going to be our guy. He goes, but Jack's like, there's a catch. He has to be anonymous. Because if Calvin finds out, the guy's dead. I mean, it's a given. He's really worried about his family, and so that's the only way that he's going to testify. And Mike's like, okay, all right, let me check it out. Let me talk to the DA, because that's who's really in charge of this thing. All he's doing is bringing the information to him and kind of like helping him figure out what the next steps are. It sounds legit, but If there's a deal to be made, then we'll do the best we can. And he's going to talk to the DA. He's like, okay, we'll figure it out. So they're going to keep in touch. And, if Jack has any more information, he'll call Mike. And once Mike hears something, then he'll contact Jack. And hopefully they can do something for Spencer. Because really, Spencer, I think he didn't realize what he got himself into.
I think once Spencer became a dad, that changed everything. He realized that he's now a father and he's responsible for another human life.
Yeah.
And so that's where things parenting can do that to you, as you are fully aware of.
Of course. His family's involved now, so that changes everything. He just wants out. And Calvin doesn't let anybody, he wouldn't even let him leave the property. Exactly. So, you don't get out easily when it comes to Calvin, and he doesn't want to go out in a body bag, so he's got to find another way. Yeah. So now we're back at the bar. Now, Jamie is still in town, and because she runs restaurants, Preacher most likely pulled her into this whole food poisoning situation to get her input, because she obviously has a lot of experience with a lot of different things, and, maybe can give some insight. So she's asking the group, so how many people are sick? And they're like, about a dozen. And any word what might have caused it. And they're like, well, they think it's the beet salad. And he's like, I don't understand, because all the ingredients, they're all organic. And, Preacher tests his soil once a week. Have a very strict way of doing things. And then Jack is like, did you check with Ricky or George and make sure that everybody followed protocol? Because they have certain, Preacher's very specific in his kitchen. He has certain things that you need to do and certain rules you need to follow. And Jamie is like, okay, she's going to play food critic detective, right?
Yeah, devil's advocate, basically.
Right. She's like, okay, so let's look at other things. Did anything change this week? And she's like, well, she goes, something had to change. And then Ricky walks in and he's like, actually, now Ricky's been off. He's not been right since Lizzie's been around. She's very distracting with the stealing the liquor and the crashing the car and missing his shift. And Ricky has not been himself. And so he, I think, regardless, would take the blame, because he's figuring if it had to be me. He's like, I think it's my fault. And they're all looking at him like, what? And he was like, well, I know I said I followed protocol, but I'm not sure I double washed the lettuce. And they're like, Ricky. And he goes, I got a lot on my plate right now. And so Mel walks in and she's like, what's going on? And he's like, I'm not sure I washed the lettuce. So he's taking full blame. It's my fault, my responsibility. I'm really sorry. And Mel's like, no, Ricky, you're not to blame. She knows. And he's like, I'm not? And she's like, yeah, there's a chance that this outbreak might not be food related. Now everybody's like, what? Wait, you traced it to the beet salad. So how? She's like, shortness of breath. And they're like, wait a minute. What exactly? What do you mean? He goes, well, we're not sure yet whether someone washed or didn't wash the salad. It didn't have anything to do with it. So Ricky's like, okay, good. I'm going to be in the kitchen. Take a deep breath. And so then they're all looking to Jamie, since she has the most experience with this. And she goes, well, if it were me, I'd look for an outlier. And they're like, well, what do you mean? She goes, a new food supplier, a new employee, I don't know, a rival restaurant, something like that. And he goes, do you think somebody would really do this deliberately? She's like, look, knowing how meticulous Preacher is with the food, it's possible. So he's like, yeah, but
and even she knows he's meticulous,
right?
And
yeah.
Only been down for what, a week?
Yeah, she spent enough time with him to know that it's nothing he did. And I don't think she ever thought it was anything he did, or even the protocols that he put in place that people would most likely follow. So I think from the beginning, she never thought that it was him or the kitchen. Right. And so she's like, everybody's like, yeah, but this is Virgin River. People wouldn't do that. She goes, well, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if it's a small town, big city. The restaurant business is dog eat dog. Mm-hmm. So she said, you're gonna, you always have to be looking out for yourself. So they're kind of like, okay, we got to put our thinking caps on and figure it out. So now we're back at Hope's, and Doc is there, and Hope comes in, and she
Is not happy.
not happy. And he's like, so you didn't make lasagna? And she's like, ugh, you're just going to have to deal with leftovers. And he goes, no, it's fine. It's okay. And he goes, well, I was planning to cook, but then there was an incident, she calls it, at the salon. He goes, oh, don't worry about it. The clinic was so busy, I ended up eating a late lunch anyway, so it's not a big deal. She's like, wait a minute. You're telling me that you're not even hungry? He goes, oh, I'll have a banana. It's fine. She's like, oh, wait a minute. So if I had made lasagna, by the way, that takes 6 hours, you would not have eaten it? And he's like, well, she goes, I would have rearranged my entire day and canceled everything. And he goes, well, considering you didn't, I would say your complaint is moot. Like he's, see? No problem. You didn't have time. I already ate. We're all good. And she's like, No. That is not the point.
That's not.
You're being cavalier with my time. Like, she's already in a mood, and this is just sending her over the edge.
Well, they're both in a mood.
Yeah, they are.
They're both in a mood.
And then he starts jumping down her throat.
This is a stupid argument. You and I both are well aware of that.
I know. He's like, why are you picking a fight with me? She's like, I'm not. And then she does this, like, exasperated plop on the chair. She's like, I've had an extremely stressful day, and you're agitating me. Oh, my gosh. So funny. He goes, for most people, a house walkthrough and a haircut would be a nice day. And she goes, you have no idea what I'm dealing with. She's so dramatic.
Is exactly so melodramatic.
Oh, my gosh. The Academy Award goes to Hope McCrae for episode 8.
She reminds me of teenagers.
Yep.
And you've had 2 of those in your life.
Exactly. And he's like, so what's got you? And she's like, Charmaine told me that she's thinking of moving. And she made me promise not to tell Jack. And he's like, crah. What? He goes, I can't believe you're back to gossiping about Jack. And he is mad. I mean, the look. Oh, he is pissed. And she's like, I'm not. I told Charmaine I didn't want to know. And she told me anyway. He's like, yeah, well, I find it hard to believe. She's like, you really don't believe me? And he's like, all I know is I don't have the energy to deal with you right now and all of your nonsense. And he's pissed. Good night. And he leaves and he slams the door. And then, as he walks out, he kind of grabs his face.
Yeah, like he's having a dizzy spell.
And it's like he can't see almost. He stops for a minute, and then he kind of composes himself, and then he keeps walking.
So now we have the young folks, the youngins, as they say. And so
Ricky is showing up
at the house, yes, for a date or something.
Nah, something with Lizzie.
And he brought candy, her favorite thing.
Oh, nice.
And
lots of candy.
Lots of candy.
Popcorn, candy, the whole 9 yards. He brought it all.
It's going to be quite a date night. Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, well, what are we going to watch? And he's like, I don't know. I heard Stranger Things is good. And she's like, you've never seen it? Like, what's wrong with him? He goes, I don't have a lot of free time. She's
Tell
like,
me about it.
I can't even with you right now.
Yeah, the kid's got a job and he's got to study. Things that you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And she's like, well, come on, let's go. And he goes, well, where? He goes, my room. We have to start your education. And he's like, and he's very uncomfortable going up to her bedroom. He's like, let me grab some water real quick.
Yeah, there were no boys in my bedroom.
He's like, my mouth feels really dry. He goes, I'm fine. I just need a cup of water. She goes, yeah, grab a glass. Meet me upstairs. My bed is way more comfortable than the couch. And he's like, yeah, Sure. Okay. So uncomfortable. Like, this is
Mm,
uncharted territory for this teenage boy.
tell me about it. The fact that a girl shows any interest in him is first,
Yeah.
a big deal.
Now, Preacher, it's after hours, and he has taken himself to the Humboldt County Police Department because he wants to do some checking.
Mm.
He's looking around for somebody. Now, this is interesting. Remember how we're not sure timeline of where, when things are?
Yeah.
So we think that Mel moved to Virgin River sometime after Valentine's Day to very, very, very beginning of March. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And we don't, it's hard to know how much time has passed because they don't really say, but things move very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Charmaine's just a little bit pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, while Preacher is at this police station, they show a map on the wall. And they have this one thing that says April 4th, first body found. And there's a pin. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
burnt car 12 miles from the body. And there's another pin. And then there's April 24th, new body. Now, this is sometime after, probably a few days. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at the end of April-ish. So
Yeah.
we can determine that if maybe Mel moved to Virgin River third, fourth week of April, it's been
April?
about, February, the third or
Okay.
fourth week of February, that now we're in like about the very, very end of April. So it's been about 2 months, which is interesting because we are getting close to the end of the second season. So for us lay people out in TV land, it's been 2 years. But for Virgin River, it's barely been 2 months. So it's almost like a season is about a month. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
very slow timeline.
Tell me about it.
But like I've said before, we feel like we are living life with them because we get to experience so much of their everyday life. So I thought that was very interesting that if you notice these little details, that it helps with the timeline.
Mm.
So
It certainly does.
so we're looking at this board, and then a cop walks in. He goes, "Hey, Preacher, how's it going? What's up?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, the sheriff asked me to stop by." And he goes, "Oh, he's not here, And he goes, "Well, I can wait." He's, "Oh, it's gonna be a while. There was an abandoned vehicle located up by Dinsmore." And he's like, "Dinsmore?" He goes, "Yeah, hunting party found it, up in the mountain in the brush or whatever." And he goes, "Oh, surprised the lost vehicle rates so high on his agenda." He goes, "Normally it wouldn't, but it's registered to a missing person." He's like, "Oh, interesting. Okay, well, I'll just catch the sheriff later. Have a good day." And he gets out of there. So now we know bodies are being found. One we know is Leo. Looks like another body was found, and now an abandoned vehicle. So now Preacher's probably starting to worry because remember,
Mm-hmm.
there's a body in a car that he's responsible for putting out there.
Yep.
It's a little scary. So he's going to try to find out what's going on without trying to find out what's going on. Cuz you got to play it cool.
And he's got his sloop partner.
Oh yes. Connie the sleuth is on the case. So Mel is at the clinic. It's got to be the end of the day. I mean, can you imagine what kind of day they had trying to run down all that information with all those people and everybody sick? And
Yep.
she's a knock at the door, and it's George. Remember George the server?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Hey, George, right? Is that your name?" And he's like, Yeah. Sorry it's so late." He's like, "Oh my God, my hands, they're on fire." And he's like, "Really? Come on in. Let me check you out." And he goes, "They kind of itch. But it kind of feels like a burn." And she goes, "Okay, let's sit down. Let's see what I can do." So she looks for some topical cream and is going to take down the inflammation. And she's like, so do you have any other symptoms, like fever, shortness of breath? He goes, I had a stomach cramp a little bit, but yeah, it went away. It was no big deal. Right now, it's just the rash. He goes, it hurts like a mother. And he kind of, censors himself. And she's like, so did you have the beet salad while you were at Jack's in the last, day or two? And he goes, oh, no, I can't stand beets. He's like, okay. He goes, so do you do any of the vegetable prep? And he goes, no, like I told Preacher, I'm a waiter. I'm not a cook. So she's like, so how long have you been working there? He goes, I don't know, like maybe about a week. And he goes, why? He's, oh, just wondering, do you like it? And he's like, yeah, it's a job. Like, he doesn't really care. And so she puts this stuff all over his hands, and she's like, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you sit there for a little bit. We got to let the cream kind of absorb into your skin, and then I'm going to bandage him up, and you'll be good to go. So I'll be right back. You just sit tight. And he's like, okay, cool. So he's just going to sit there, and she's playing it real cool, and she kind of excuses herself. She goes behind a door, and she shuts it, and then she pulls her phone out, and she calls Jack. And she's like, Jack, can you come to the clinic? And he's like, yeah, sure. What's going on? She goes, there's something I think you need to see. She doesn't tell him what it is, but he's like, okay, I'll be right there. And so then he gets another call, and it's Carlos. And Carlos is the real estate guy. And Carlos is like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, well, I decided to move forward with the house. And he's, oh, dude, your timing is off. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, another buyer made another offer, 10% over asking. He goes, oh, man, are you serious? And he goes, look, I don't think I could swing that. And he goes, well, you could rent the upstairs room. That'll give you additional income. Then you'd be okay with the mortgage. And he goes, oh, hadn't thought of that. And he goes, well, I have somebody who actually might rent that from you. Let me talk to him, get his information, and if that works out, it'd be awesome. You can get the place, be good to go. So Jack's like, okay, cool, let me know. They hang up. Now Jack's got to make a beeline over to the clinic. So it sounds like he's going to go through, possibly, with buying this house. Interesting. Because in his mind, he's got to have a place for these babies when they come.
Yep.
And he's got to be able to afford it, because not only is that a house, but babies are expensive. And 2 babies are twice as expensive. So now we see Ricky and Lizzie, and they're watching Stranger Things. It's very suspenseful. And she closes the laptop, and he's like, what are you doing? She goes, I'm tired of watching TV. He goes, okay, well, what do you want to do? She goes, I don't know. Just hang out. And he's like, okay. He goes, do you have a fan in here? It's all of a sudden feeling really stuffy. She's like, oh, maybe it's the humidity, or she's just laughing at him because she knows she's making him feel very uncomfortable.
Yep.
So she opens the window. She's like, there, is that better? He goes, oh, perfect. That's great. She goes, now come over here. Let's take a selfie. And he's like, all right. So they take a cute picture. Very cute.
Yeah.
Oh, you look really pretty. She goes, thanks. Let's do one more. And so they take another picture and make funny faces. They're laughing. Very cute. She goes, he's like, I look weird. She goes, no, you don't. And then she gives him a little kiss. And she's like, do you want to go lie down? And he's like, I don't think we should. She's like, well, why not? Because I never had sex before. She goes, who said we were having sex? He's like, I'm so sorry. I thought with the kissing on the bed, and you wanted to be alone, and I didn't mean to assume. And she takes a deep breath, and he's like, look, you probably think I'm some kind of freak. I wouldn't blame you, if you didn't even want to hang out anymore. And then she holds his hand. She's like, look, if you're a freak, then I'm a freak. And he's like, what do you mean? She goes, well, what do you think I mean? She goes, you'd be my first too. And he's like, wow. She goes, but don't you dare tell anyone because it's embarrassing. Because I'm sure everybody thinks that she's been around the block maybe once or twice. So
True.
he's like, "You sure you don't want me to leave?" She goes, "Oh, no, the best part's coming up." And so they open the laptop again and they start watching more Stranger Things. But now they're holding hands. So they're cute.
Yeah.
Okay, so Calvin is walking through the forest with Brady and he's like, "Okay, so I hear you blew my sale." Because now he's pissed that Lily won't go through with the sale because Jack got
Oh yeah.
involved. And I think Calvin was thinking that Brady had some kind of pull with Jack and he would get him to like follow along. So
Hmm.
maybe Brady isn't as useful as Calvin thought he was.
Yeah. Well, you remember he was trying to get into the Virgin River.
Well, yeah, and that's why he was gonna use his connection with Jack in order to do that, thinking Calvin thought he had more pull, and he doesn't. And I guess Brady even thought he probably had more pull, and he
The
doesn't.
only pull he has is pulling up his pants.
Right? Exactly. So Brady's like, "Don't worry, we can get another farm. It's fine. Because the county's full of them." Yeah, well, and he's like, "Yeah, I know your buddy Sheridan had a hand in messing this up." And he goes, "Dude, he's not my buddy." And he goes, "I brought you in here because of your connection, so you could be a help to us. So far, not the case." Now, they walk up on this little site. It's a light, like a lantern, a shovel, and a very big hole that's been dug. And Brady gets very nervous. He's like, "Hey, hey, 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 ho, whoa, 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 whoa." And he gets in front of him and he was like, "Look, let me take another run at Lily. I know I can turn things around. And he's like, "It's too late for that." Calvin's like, "You know what? If I don't feel I can trust you," he goes, You can, I swear. Just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. I'm your guy." And he goes, "I need you to show me I can trust you." He goes, "How?" He goes, "You'll see." And then a car pulls up and a couple of guys get out and they help a third gentleman out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
And this other guy, Brady's like, "Whoa, hold on." They're like, "Set him down right here." And it's Spencer. And Spencer
Mm-hmm.
looks like they beat him up pretty good.
Oh yeah.
And he goes, "See, Brady, you're either on the team or you're off. Or you're on the team or you're not." He goes, "Spencer, he's not on the team." And Brady's looking at him like, "Oh, what?"
Mm-hmm.
And he gives Brady a gun, and Calvin and all of the guys walk away. They get on their vehicles and they drive away. Interesting that they leave Brady there to handle
Mm-hmm.
this instead of watching, like they're trusting that he's going to do what he needs to do
Right.
so that he can, follow Calvin.
Mm-hmm.
And Spencer's looking mighty scared.
Oh yeah.
And Brady's just standing there like, okay, what have I gotten myself into?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, this is not what I
It
signed
wasn't
up
like
for.
he wasn't warned.
Exactly. And the thing is, as soon as he found out drugs were involved, he should have known it was going to go downhill real fast.
Mm-hmm.
But, he put himself in this position. Now he's got to figure out a way out. So we're back at the clinic. Mel's waiting around, and Jack walks in through the kitchen, and she's like, "Be quiet. One of your servers just came in, George." And he goes, "Well, he didn't say he has food poisoning, but he has this like weird rash on his hands, and he has some of the symptoms as the other patients, but they went away immediately, and he said he didn't eat the salad, and I don't know." And he's like, "Oh, so what are you saying? You think that George deliberately contaminated the food?" He goes, I don't know. Jamie said look for an outlier. He hasn't been working for you for very long." He's like, "Well, yeah, about a week. And what's the motive?" And he goes, "I don't know. His story just doesn't add up." And Jack's like, okay, let me go talk to him. Let me see what I can find out. So they take a walk into where he's waiting, and Mel's like, he was just here. And then they hear noises, and they see headlights. A vehicle approaches, and the back door is open, and they run outside on the porch, and guess who they see?
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy driving a
Slimy
truck.
Jimmy.
Yep.
Slimy Jimmy.
Slimy Jimmy driving the truck, and they see George jumping in the passenger side, and they drive away really fast. And Mel's like, well, there's your motive.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack's like, well, I guess that's one way of telling me to stay out of his business.
Mm-hmm.
And Mel's like, okay, I got to call the sheriff. And Jack's like, no. Nope, he's pissed. He goes, this is between me and Calvin.
And the war has begun.
Oh, and Mel's like worried.
She doesn't like the sound of that.
No, that's not good. That's not good.
Nope.
And
there it ends.
So now there's going to be a bit of a war. Because Jack is not going to let that stand. It's like, it's one thing if you mess around with me, or my stuff or whatever. But he went after his customers. He went after his business.
Yeah.
That's a line you do not cross. And he crossed it.
Yep.
So Jack isn't going to let that stand. He's going to get him back. He's going to figure it out. Now there's a lot going on. Man, that next episode, very interesting. We tie up a few loose ends. We figure out some things. Very interesting.
Yes, indeed.
Well, that was a good one.
All right. Well, till next time, folks.
Yep. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Virgin River. We're getting very close. There's 2 more episodes before the end of season 2. We're going to just keep going. All right. Well, have a great day, Gigi, and we will talk to everyone next time.
All righty. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.